from Science of Mind magazine, the Daily Guides. And as you know from yesterday, or maybe you don't, I don't know, we're actually back with the digital version, which actually helps because it makes it look like I'm looking at the camera, which I try to do. When I'm actually reading on the computer with the book, it's kind of hard to look at the camera. When I'm doing it on my iPad or some other device, it's much easier because they're smaller. But this is a 27-inch screen that, and the top is, camera's way up there. I don't know how it tracks. Today's reading it's really a challenge. It's really challenging us to do something. So without any further ado, here we go. It's called Bold Curiosity. How about that? The first quote is from Constance Friday, and I didn't know, and I still really don't know who Constance Friday is. I looked up Constance Friday. It turns out he's quite a character. I'm not sure what nationality he is, but I do know that he supports a football team, aka a soccer team back in England called Arsenal, which I don't. But apparently he does because it's on his Facebook page. All I can recommend you do is, if you want to find out more about Constance Friday, is go to his Facebook page and have a look. There's lots of quotes out there from him, and he's I think his PhD, and he's been in teaching, and I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now, but anyway, seems like an interesting character. And he comes up with a twist on one of the old sayings. You've all heard the saying, curiosity killed the cat. Well, Constance Friday says, curiosity did not kill the cat. It transformed the cat into a lion. You're a key individual in the transformation of your nation. What I like about this is that it's not nation-centric. He's actually talking about human race, about your nation and not just a nation. A lot of what I find is when I do readings, especially here in the US, that a lot of them are US-centric. They don't sometimes consider the outer world. And believe me, having lived in different countries around the world, there's a lot more to this world than the US. The US is a lot. And right now it's the leading nation in the world. But there is a lot more out there besides it. The ones of you who grew up in the US and almost did geography in the US, well, it's probably something that you should restudy because there's a whole big world out there. And this is Ernest Holmes. It's a real long quote, actually, and it's from something I've never read called The Philosophy of Jesus, and it's on page 21, paragraph 1. And paragraph 1 must be a big part of page 21. It's long. So it becomes a question of whether our faith is greater than the obstruction. He's talking about manifesting things. Whether we're becoming confused over conditions or thinking peacefully and calmly about them. In other words, whether we can focus on what we want versus what actually is right in front of us. When it comes right down to a rock bottom fact, the only question is whether or not we believe in a power greater than we are that we can use, and whether or not we actually believe that this power is ready, willing, and able to respond to us. That is the whole philosophy of manifestation, that there is a power greater than we are and we can use it. So what Ernest Holmes is saying here is, hey, it's okay and it's easy to state that, to say it, but it's a lot harder to do it. And are you doing it? Do you really, really believe there's a power greater than we are for our good that we can use? As I said, that is from Ernest Holmes on the Philosophy of Jesus. You want to look at it another way, simplified Jesus terms, it's done unto you as you believe. That's really what it is. And this, we're going back to Reverend Raymond. A curiosity that is bold is a curiosity willing to ask questions that may not readily have answers. We ask anyway. The questions may cause discomfort. We ask anyway. The questions may uncover undesired facts. No matter what, bold curiosity demands that we ask the questions anyway. He goes on to say, a few prompts to get the contemplation going. What is a world that works for all? What does it look like? What needs to be released and surrendered so that it manifests? What are we unwilling to release and surrender, individually and collectively? What pains, traumas, and ineffective ways of operating have occurred in our lives, in our movement, whichever that turns out to be, our countries, wherever they are, our families, our organization, and so on and so forth, that have been unaddressed, unresolved, and unhealed? What are we being invited to deconstruct theologically so we can truly be open at the top? So in other words, are our ideas of spirituality, the divine, so fixed that we're not open to new ways of looking at things? I know when I came into New Thought, it opened my eyes. It totally gave me a new way of looking at things. He goes on to ask, what would happen if you channel curiosity so powerfully that the cat did become a lion, as Friday states above, and that the lion then demonstrated what it means to be a key individual in the transformation of the planet? This is quite the role and responsibility. And then he asks, but several people, is that not what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did? Is that not what Viktor Frankl did? Harvey Milk, Bell Hooks, Gene Roddenberry, and George Lucas? Is that not what each of us is being called into right now with the grand rising and bold living? And he finishes by saying, are you curious enough to ask the questions and then create a world that truly works for all? Sometimes we all get very comfortable in what we're doing. We get very comfortable in our ways of life. We get very comfortable in the groups that we're part of, but oftentimes we don't look outside to see what's going on. And I'm really amused, pleasantly amused, and I'm really kind of happy that when he asks questions about what people have done, he quotes such a vast array of people. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., everybody in the States knows him. Everybody around the world, I think, knows him. That he was striving for equality, that he wanted Black Americans to have the same privileges as white Americans. And we've made some progress. Are we all the way there? No, that's one of the bold questions is maybe, why aren't we there? Why don't we have equality? Why do we still have a system that penalizes people of color? I don't know. I can tell you this, it's much safer for me to drive down the street than it is for some of my friends who are of different colored complexes or different nationalities, whether they be Black, brown, Asian, Hispanic, Native American. They're much more likely to be stopped by the cops than I am. And that's not a world that I want to live in. Is it a world that you want to live in? And then he talks about Viktor Frankl, who, if you're not familiar with him, he survived the concentration camps and the extermination camps in Germany. He survived because he was a doctor and they needed him. His family, his wife was murdered by the Nazis. But he came out of this asking us to look at the world in a different way. Harvey Milk, Bell Hooks are reasonably well known. Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas, yes, they showed us a new way of looking at life. If you go back to Star Trek, then you see that the Starship Enterprise had not just different kinds of humans on board, it had different kinds of intelligent beings on board. that were part of the crew. And George Lucas, well, you can read if you want into that he speaks in a metaphysical sense, right? He talks about the Force. It's no different than what Holmes is talking about here when he's talking about a power greater than you are. It's the same thing. So did George Lucas get it from New Thought? Probably. But the whole crux of this is asking questions about what we can do to start changing things. Most of us are not in positions of power, but we can do stuff at our own level, right? The affirmation. Today I ask bold, courageous, and transformative questions. And we begin by asking the questions of ourselves. What can I do? What can I help my organizations do? How can I help people see the world in a different light? It's a really big subject, too much for just one reading. And hopefully we will go on to have more readings of a similar nature. But for now, today I ask bold, courageous, and transformative questions of myself and of the world in general. And that's really all I've got to say, because I am in the not too distant future about to dash off to a business meeting, which is of course nothing new to the ones of you who watch this. And I'm grateful to my wife. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I'm grateful to my wife because she is preparing a late lunch so that I can dash off to this business meeting, because we've been out shopping for essentials, grocery shopping actually. But I just wanted to mention one thing I had forgotten, and I had forgotten to do it myself, and I'm starting to do it now. And that is, when I'm waking up in the morning, the first thing I try and do is think of something or some things for which I am grateful. And they can be little things, big things, it doesn't matter. You can be grateful just for the fact that you're waking up. You can be grateful for the fact that we've had rain recently. You can be grateful for lots of different things. So my challenge to you and to me is this. When we're waking up first thing in the morning, let's think of at least one thing for which we are grateful that day. And it can be big, it can be small, it doesn't matter. So until next time, and remember, Reverend Lisa will be on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock-ish Central Time, USA. And until tomorrow evening at hopefully somewhere around about 5 o'clock, I'll be back with another reading from Reverend Raymond Anderson. And I think he is somebody also. Look him up. He is a really interesting character. Yes, I've spoken to him personally before and after our soul session, but look him up. He's really worth looking up. And look up Constance Friday, because he seems to be a really interesting character too. So until next time, namaste.